are not just displaced inside the country, but outside as well, in neighboring nations like Jordan, where they account for 10% of the population. Assimilating the refugees can be a challenge, and one nonprofit called the Syria Fund is helping with the process. I'm here with Lexi Shereshewsky, the executive director, to learn more. So Lexi, where does your organization focus and why?
So we actually work in a small rural town in northeast Jordan. And one of the reasons why we're working there is because actually the vast majority of refugees in Jordan live outside of refugee camps among host communities, among Jordanians in towns and villages in the northern part of the country.
So what are some common misperceptions about Syrian refugees?
I think people tend to assume that refugees live in refugee camps. There's a lot of media attention that takes place in the refugee camps. It's very easy to imagine what that looks like, but the reality is that they don't. And that creates a whole different set of issues and different ways you have to respond to what their needs are and also to the communities that they're living in.
So why is it also important to support Jordanians, the host country, as well as Syrians?
Yeah, so for example, in the town that we work in South Azraq, the population has nearly doubled from the influx of Syrians. So you can imagine what that does to a small town. Some of these towns are very rural and underserved to begin with low education levels, high unemployment. And when you add all of these people who bring a lot of need, it can really change the dynamic. And so it's really important to make sure that you're thinking about social cohesion, that you're thinking about making sure that whatever program that you're doing that would benefit the Syrian refugee community is also going to help the Jordanians as well.
What are some specific initiatives that your organization has taken to help Syrian refugees?
Yeah, so we primarily focus on education. We run a non-formal education program, meaning that we're not providing credit for the kids, but that they're really getting back up to speed. Many of them have missed 3 or more years of school, so we're making sure that they're at the level that they're meant to be at for their grade level, succeeding with their peers, and most importantly, learning a love of education that will keep them in school, because what we find is that dropout rate among high schoolers is extremely high, and so it's really important to make sure that kids are in school, that they're succeeding, and that you try to eliminate a lot of those barriers that lead them to dropping out, like the need to work, early marriage, sort of lack of interest or motivation, lack of transportation, a whole host of issues. And then we also really want to support the wider community. So we do a lot of humanitarian aid distributions of food, hygiene, and different things that can help the community, bringing in people that bring expertise in terms of awareness sessions, general knowledge. Of course, through the program, we've created a ton of jobs for Jordanians. And we make sure that we purchase everything that we do locally. So we really want to focus in on the community that we work and make sure that everybody is benefiting from the program.
Now, do we know if Syrian refugees are returning back home, or are they staying on in Jordan and other places that they choose to go?
So you are seeing now that as the situation in Syria is changing all the time, there still is active fighting, especially in the northern part of the country and still in the eastern part of the country. But you are seeing that there are small numbers of people who are going home, but there's a lot of risk. First of all, the economy is completely shattered. A lot of people's homes and villages were totally destroyed in the war and have not been rebuilt. And then there's the uncertainty about the political situation. You know, a lot of these people fled Bashar al-Assad's regime, and Bashar al-Assad is still in power. So for them to go back, they're risking potentially being arrested, being drafted into the army. And if they do decide to go back to Syria, it will be very hard for them to come back to Jordan, regain the refugee status that they have, and be able to kind of get the benefits from the UN or from other organizations that are catering to refugees.
We'll see you next time on another episode of Business Insider Today.